I have known Tunga for many, many years. I have exhibited his works, and I'm very happy that I'm the custodian of a very major installation, Les Arts, which is at the collection of the Museum of Fine Arts Houston. So it is a great pleasure to be here tonight in this informal discussion and conversation. And I thought what we would do tonight is really look at the context of the exhibition that Tunga has presented. I see in this is a new body of work which has taken about 4 or 5 years of production. And I see interesting continuities as well as some what appear to be some ruptures with the body of work that came before. And so I think that this is an opportunity to look at some of these wonderful works and trace some of the connections to his earlier work. And for that purpose, I selected a very small group of slides, and I think we're just going to try to engage in a conversation with those slides, which I think will be useful for those of you who are not that familiar with his work. So I would like to begin with the series of drawings that are a major focus of this exhibition. And there are 2 kinds of drawings in the show. They are the drawings, like the one that we're seeing here in this piece, which are a complement to the sculptures, and they have sort of like images. They're sort of like more allegorical images that relate in some way, complement those pieces. And then there are this extraordinary group of drawings that are extremely remarkable for the fact that they are, for one thing, made out of one continuous line. And at the same time, this is one line that is both extremely fluid, but at the same time extremely controlled. And when you look at it, you see how out of that continuous movement of the line, there is images related to the body, to faces, countenances, fingers, that appear and reappear with an extreme fluidity. I am very impressed by these drawings, and also by the fact that, as you will notice, they operate on this notion of a mirror effect, which means that everything that's on one side, is repeated on the next. And you can actually look at these drawings for hours on end, and you will continue to see shapes and contours of bodies, that appear and reappear. And so I would like to ask Tunga, I see in this body of work sort of like a new direction, in your work. I know that drawing has been a very important part of your work throughout the years, but I don't really recall drawings of this particular nature. So I would like for you to address, the topic of drawing, what it means to you, and how these drawings evolve. We have some slides to show some of the origins, but I thought we would start with just talking to us a little bit about the act of drawing.
Well, in fact, good night. Thank you for coming. In fact, about the drawings, the lines for me had always been a central problem, the relationship between the lines and the volumes. So I saw in the lines of the drawing the borders of bodies, but often those bodies are not in contrast with el fondo.
With the ground, with the background.
With the background. The lines is something that divides a continent from other continent, one body from other body. So for several years, for a long time, I've been practicing these drawings, which define the continuity of the line, define different bodies, and they create, in a sense, a narrative. You can see that from each border of one line, it's another body, and it's a way to construct, to build a story, a narrative that is built from the glance of the person who's looking, and not necessarily by mine. So each time you combine one line that forms an image with another image, and just in the second later, the same line starts showing another body, another scene. But those drawings, they suppose that the lines went out from the paper. So they suppose a kind of metonymic structure, which is something for me very strange, because mostly of the body of my work, I work with metaphors and not with metonyms, which means I pretend to have the entirety, the integrality of something referring to other, not a fragment. So the idea is to build a continuity from continuities, not a continuity from fragments, which is the tradition of modern art. Modern art has always been trying to say that the subjectivity is a construction from fragments, and you have from opposite fragments, from different moments from those fragments, to build a continuity, a body, which is the subjectivity, the modern subjectivity. In my point of view, I always thought that maybe those fragments were something completely like a pack, like a quantic pack, something closed. So not something metonymical, but something metaphoric. How to put together metaphors. So I use the image of the torus, which is a topological image that is a closed body, continuous surface. And my original question were how to connect closed body to another closed body to another closed body, building a space which is continuous, but those elements are discrete at the same time. So, just getting back, those new drawings from the act of doing the sculptures, which some of the sculptures which are present in this new show, which are fragments, which are bodies, but they look like parts of the body connected one to the other. They are indeed actual bodies. Our image of our own body as human beings is a construction. And we know that the babies don't have an image of their bodies like two legs, two arms. They build continuously in a successful transformation, an instantaneous body in function of the desire, of the requisitions, of different situations. So this goes till a certain point, which is so-called the state of the mirror, where the identity is formed. So before there's not an identity. The human being is not a self. So, and all the humankind passes through that. So my idea is that it is possible to rescue this state of mind where your body is a reconstruction of fragments of feelings, of sensations. And so in each moment, you are faced, you have introjected a new structure of body, which is not the identical of what you see in the mirror, of what you think you yourself are. Connecting the lines of the previous drawings and making them close, I was able to construct an image of this body, a closed image. But also, the topology of the line makes that your glance can walk through this line and transform this body successfully. So in this way, those drawings became like a map for those sculptures which are present in the parts of the other sculptures. So let's
right. Before we pass on to the sculptures, I'd like to also delve a little bit more into sort of like the origin of these drawings, because as I said, they would seem to be something new in your production, but I see that there are some.
Oh my God.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. This is a very, very early work of yours, which I absolutely adore, and it's a work from 1976 called Venus. And I see when trying to understand, how these drawings came about, I see some of the same complexities of how you dealt with the relationship between the figure and ground, and the idea of a concave and a convex space, already present in this very, very early work. This is one of your earliest works. So is there a deliberate attempt to go back, to some of the concerns, that you were developing here, and if so, why the need to do so now at this particular time?
Yeah, it's curious. I mean, the whole body of my works is kind of visiting and revisiting old works, and in the sense of a parody, a new work, try to transform the vision of the old works. But the attention that Mari Carmen took for this piece surprised me, because it was so clear, and I haven't seen that, so I didn't remember that. The intentions on this piece, which were like a program for a series of works that I developed later.
This is a rubber piece.
This is a rubber piece,
yes.
and the fact is that there's a shape of rubber which has a cut. And this cut separates one part to the other. Normally, regularly in classical sculpture, let's say, we present a piece is what we take off something and we let a part of the work, which is the work. So when you work on stone, you just give the stone, take off the part which is the rest, and show the part which is the sculpture. In that moment, I was thinking about incorporating this gesture of cutting, of separating, and then showing the separate part and putting together. Working with rubber means, in a sense, that this line was an elastic line. So the line which cut separates both, and after I make the reunion of the both parts. One goes by the floor and the other in the wall, which is like one is rejected by the floor, the other is for the glance, for the eyes. And, but in fact, the deformation that you can see from this part, which is cut and is turned in a certain way to create a, I don't know how to speak in English. Anyway, a surface which is not flat, indicates the possibility of the same line being structured and elastic. And this aspect is present in these new drawings. Even if they are not elastic, they are elastic for the eyes. So they have the effect of being elastic without the physical quality of being elastic. So between which we do in the sculpture is try to translate into a physical state the intention, and the drawing is the indication and for the eyes to make it happen.
Well, I think that there's a couple of other works that also have a relationship to what they disappeared, and this was the serpent, the braid. It's almost like these new drawings represent, you know, the separation of these two lines of the braid and their reconfiguration into these bodies.
Yeah, there's two aspects on the tress. The one is the fact that I start doing the tress thinking on the same line that was cutting the shape of rubber. And I said, what is the materiality of the line? The tress in a certain distance is a line, but it's not a line. A line is an abstract concept. A line as a point does not exist in physical reality. So we interpret it, we make like a spaghetti is a line. No, spaghetti is a pasta. It's material. No, it's not a line. A hair is a line. Well, it's the first approach we have with a line. It's our own hair, maybe. That's why I use this image, this idea of hair. But in the tress, this line that looks like a line at a distance, when you get close, you see that there's a structure. And in fact, it's the first structure, mathematical, geometrical structure that humankind produced. It's doing tresses, it's doing tissues, it's doing fabrics. So it's a really archaic way of thinking three in one. This is one tress, which is already a very abstract way of thinking that mankind had from very, very old times. In this case, the tress, I have a small thing to do with this tress, which is not just the act of tressing and doing one from three, because the tress is one from three. It's also the structure of a Borromeo knot. A Borromean knot is a particular knot that is composed by three lines, closed lines, that if you push two of the circles, the third is connecting like a chain. If you take the chain and you push, the one which is in the border goes inside. And it's a very curious structure which also interests me for other purposes.
And then there's, of course, the exogenous axis, one of my favorite series of your work, which also are related to the body, even though the body is not really represented there as, you know, in and of itself. It's just the profile. And as you see, you can see in this line how this is really representing a body that is absent, but is there. in the profile of the wooden piece. And somehow I find that the drawings also incorporate some of the concerns that you have in these works, which were so defining in your trajectory.
Well, definitely. There's the tactics of this work came from a very well-known figure from the Gestalt theory, which is the cup that represents two faces. And in the theory, you cannot recognize both together in the same time. And I just repose the same question and say, if the line that represents the borders between the face and the fundo, ¿cómo se dice?
And the ground.
And the ground.
The ground.
If this line is not a line, but you perceive the line to be the borders of a continuous surface, it poses a question. So this sculpture is everything but a sculpture, which does means that which is represented is exactly which is not there. The sculpture, the body of the lady who is represented there, it's the emptiness, it's the whole space. So this is an axis. And the whole space is the body, and the sculpture, which is this axis, is just the limit of what it is, this body being empty, being emptiness. So the relationship here is the capacity of perception of a volume like a line, and of the space like a thing filled, not empty.
This also brings home another very important aspect of your production, which is that it really, your work, for most of, in general, really operates in that kind of intermediary space between sculpture and installation. It is about the body and at the same time what lies outside of the body. And somehow, there's always, a tension in which it is that kind of intermediary field where your work is situated.
Yes, well, one curious possible definition for one installation is a sculpture that you can get through. So, based on this principle, in this sculpture, this recent set of pieces, there is this effort to build one body that you feel that you can go through it. So it will be like my effort was to build a sculpture which is an installation that you feel like potentially all the elements can be both separated or performed in a sense of occupying the whole space.
And these pieces did occupy the whole space because there's a whole, they're a big series. We're just showing one here, but
it's configured the unity on the axis. Mm-hmm. So my effort now was to try not to through one image to configure that this piece is tributary to what we see through modernity when Rodin started to use the torso. Was quite the same moment when someone like Paul Schilder, which was a theoretician, discovers the phantom, le membre fantôme, the member. I'll just explain. Well, during the First World War, there were a lot of people with amputation. The phantom limb.
Okay.
Thanks. And the phantom limb was a discovery that from people that had lost some part of the body, still having the cortex, the memory of this part that had been lost. And they were able to feel pain in a hand, for instance, that they were not there anymore. And by coincidence, the sculpture, the Greek sculpture, retaken from Rodin, was classical a torso. And he could observe that the torso in the space, you can rebuild the parts which were amputated or lost, like that came from Greek tradition. The Greeks never done the torso, they built the whole statue. But during the time, the arms were broken, the legs were broken, and you have the tendency of rebuild the parts which were not there.
That kind of sets the stage for the next group of works, and then how the sculptures that are featuring the exhibition, take that notion of, particularly with the kinds of objects, that resemble fingers, but that turn into bodies, into breasts. And there's a kind of a transformation, also very fluid transformation, even though you're dealing with this kind of very physical, object, three-dimensional object, sometimes made out of clay, sometimes made out of plastic. But I see in these works an extension of that same.
Venus.
Excuse me?
The Venus, yeah.
Yeah, an extension of that same concern that you are displaying in the drawings. I don't know which one came first, whether you started with the drawings or with the sculptures. I assume that it was the drawings, but I may have been wrong. But then there is almost like I see this as sort of like the construction of a grammar of the body, a body that is constructed and deconstructed continually. And you're referencing right now the torsos, with amputated legs.
Yeah.
I can see a connection, with these works where you can see sort of like traces of breasts, of fingers, of finger parts, some of them, undergoing this transmutation through the power of line. So can you comment a little bit about how you see the relationship between the drawings and the sculptures?
Yeah, well, there are two categories of drawings which are shown in the exhibition, as Mari Carmen was mentioning, and mostly the four of those sculptures have with itself more allegorical drawings. So those more allegorical drawings really was the first beginning of the pieces, and from them I just kept on working to get to the abstraction of the topological drawings, let's call it like this. And I just observed that these allegorical drawings, like in the old tradition on allegory, on drawing and on painting, there's always a story to be told, there a narrative. But sometimes, and very present in the tradition of alchemy, the whole tradition of alchemy deals with the allegory in a different way, because they represent a scene which is there, or could be a play on theater which is there, the scene, and each and every element represents, for the people who knows what the codes, a certain formula. Like, for instance, when you see a wing, you might be thinking about the operation of sublimation. When you see a dragon, you can be sure that it is an acid. If it's a red dragon, it's an acid active. If it's a green dragon, etc. So I use the same kind of state of mind to build those scenes, which are in a certain way, like the bulla, we say bulla? Like the formula, like in the medicine, you can.
Yeah, formula.
The formula that interpreted the sculpture. So it comes before the sculpture in this sense. So you can, through those drawings, remade a performance from those sculptures. But those drawings, when I start re-elaborating this, which were kind of allegoric, they came from me like more and more abstract, and the line became more and more important. They refers immediately to that body I was mentioning, which are more sculptural pieces that are part of those pieces. So I think that the four moments, I'll say, on the whole exhibition now, is those pieces that refers to the possibility of the alchemy of the body, which means the transformation, the physical and chemical transformation, and the evocative references to the body to being mineral, like the crystals, and most of the pieces are built from minerals, like the terracotta is a mineral, the crystals are mineral, the gesso, the blue thing there is mineral, etc. And the vegetable as the resins which are present there. So imagine a human body rebuilt in the alchemy of something which is not proper from the body, but is part from the landscape, it's part from the world. So this is a state of dissolution of the body as well, the chemical dissolution. So the body for this baby, or the body in love, can be the rebuilding of this dissolution of the body, original body that the baby has. I think that those pieces represented, in fact, the dissolution of the love moment, where the landscape, where the what is around, and the two bodies are one and a unique thing. And this is an installation or a sculpture, whatever, but they are the compactation of this precious moment that I call the energy of conjunction, which is love.
Does that in some way, I mean, I heard you make reference to this notion of love and energy when we were talking about these works yesterday. Is that, does that signal like a new moment in your life, in your production, a more subjective one perhaps, that has influenced, how you look at how you produce these works?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just a turning point that comes from some years ago that started from a different, I tried to see things from different angle. And in a certain point, I think that I was very strongly engaged from my heritage from the Surrealists. And obviously the Surrealists just indicated for me the way from the Romanticism. And basically the great poets like Rimbaud, Artaud, and all this constellation. And in a certain moment, I just try to look in a different way and try to see that the mystery is not in the darkness, as Milton from the Lost Paradise established. The mystery is not in what we do not know. The mystery is in life. And I think that those set of works, for me, brings this good energy of seeing how mysterious life and the sun and the light is. And that's it.
Now, one of the things that struck me when I first saw these images and then saw the works is that these works really are very different from some of the more paradigmatic works that we keep in our minds about your production. And I'm referring to works like Cadentes Lácteos of 1994, and or the piece at the Museum of Fine Arts, Les Arts, of 1989. I mean, these works obviously are made, and for a long time you were producing works with these, with iron, with copper, with these very heavy materials that are very old, but at the same time are associated with a kind of industrial, culture, and that have this kind of, shiny, gleaming surfaces. And then you have other more recent works like these cooking crystals of 2010 that also have that kind of more slick quality to them with the use of steel and glass. And so the works that we are inaugurating tonight strike me for having somehow, and I'm using this word very cautiously, a somewhat more primitive quality to them. I was actually, struck by that. It made me think of earlier forms of art, and perhaps primitive is not the word, but more archaic. There's an archaic quality to them. There is, the use of terracotta, the use of gesso, the fact that there is a kind of unfinished quality to them, the fact that they, are broken, that they, remind us of, earlier, Greek sculpture or, early Christian sculpture. So, can you comment about that aspect? Is that a deliberate aspect in the sense of your work? Were you trying to sort of like break away from what your work has been identified with in the past, or was this completely fortuitous?
It's indeed it's intentional and very intentional. Some years ago, I have this show in the Louvre, the Musée du Louvre in Paris, down the pyramid. And the Louvre is a different museum from all the other museums we are used to, because the public that goes to this place is not especially the public for art. There's the general public, and public from all over the cultures in different places in the world, they go there to see. And this piece was supposed to be hanged, suspended in the middle of the pyramid. So it was to be seen by people from different cultures that goes there, knowing that they're going to see art from different periods, etc. And my challenge was, as it was present in during the evolution of my work, was work in a vocabulary that could be understood for any culture, not for a specific culture. So I didn't want to use signs, which were signs that could be recognized just for a certain part of the world. I wanted to see art As I first experienced art when I was a kid, and my mother took me to an exhibition of African masks, and I was completely subverted by one piece, precisely one piece with clues, and I could feel things there, and I could not explain. And this kept on my mind to say art should be something independent from a moment, a cultural moment, or a country moment, country culture. And I was kind of successful in this Louvre piece. And then suddenly I just get that those industrial materials in a certain way was referring to a precise direction of the cultures in general, the world culture in general. And as I'm a good reader on old philosophy, especially Plato, I was concerned in getting back in terms of material and just not think in having a vocabulary that could be understood by any culture, but also that could have been done by any hand. And it's a way to evocate it, that the structure of poetry is still the same. We are in the contemporary age, but we can keep on reading those really old poets because the mystery is still there. Which is the mystery? The mystery is the fact that putting two things together that we know very well, we pretend to know what they are, there's something different that appeared from those two different things. They appeared because of this energy of conjunction, and make this appear is what art is about for me.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Some of these works, I think, have also, this is another one of the pieces in the show, but there are some other precedents in your work where you are using also clay or terracotta. You're also, some of the works in the show, as we saw yesterday, have you're dealing with paint and old paint and makeup. That is part of that, which is also something associated with Greek culture, with archaic culture. So I think that, and then there's other smaller pieces. I'm not sure what year this one is from, but
90 something.
90 something.
Yeah.
So you are, sort of like going back and bringing back some of these concerns now.
Yeah, very curiously, the piece you showed before, which this was shown in a Luhring Augustine gallery a couple of years ago. And in fact, the three performance ladies are making up with proper makeup, which is done by clay originally. Any makeup, it's the pigment is clay. And they are covering their own bodies and the body of sculpture in an intention of create a continuity between their bodies and the body of sculpture. And I think that this step has been done in the recent present works. So thank you, Mari Carmen, for pointing me that. Things we forget.
Okay.
In fact, this is a bronze piece, which originally, to do the bronze, you do the piece on clay, and then you do the mold, you cast it, and once casted, I used makeup, which is clay again. So it's made up from what
cast?
it was.
This is
bronze casted, yeah, with makeup.
Now, another thing that, I think some of these works are also related. This is not exactly clay, but it's more resin.
Yeah, this has been done in fiber and in bronze as well. So those are related in the sense of having discrete forms, which were the origin of certain shapes I was using. You can see bottles down or panels. And in other pieces, those bottle and panels try to be together. You have to see other pieces.
No, it's the only one.
And this was a way to say they are original from the same model. So after that, those protuberance or entrance were cut and put it together like the word before we just see. So why they are together? They are together because they have a kind of nostalgia of the incompletude. And those pieces are a bit about that.
Okay, Okay, and what about the use of the tripod? Because the tripod becomes such a it's such a salient feature of this body of work. And when I started looking back, I could see that you were using tripods very early on and always related to a relationship with the body. So can you explain a little bit?
Oh, yeah, well, I think it's implicit, the idea, here is another representation of tripod, but I was talking about the truss being
this
one
is a
discrete.
very early work. This is like 1992.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so there are three candle, vela.
It's called Cero
Be-
Tamai.
Bella, la vela, ¿cómo se llama?
Oh, vela, yeah, candles.
Candles. There are three candles, three girls wearing three shirts, and the three manga spots, the spot
The
cut
sleeve,
it,
yeah.
and throwing up. In fact, the three candles were burning till the moment that the three fires became just one. And in that moment, the three candles falls down. The three girls were there for 6 hours until they get completely tired and they go together in the floor and their hairs get together. And the other element had wine inside the tube that was dripping on the floor, forming three tasks of three lakes of wine that became then just one lake. Is in the sense the same strategy to say that 3 in 1 is one thing. It's the same like the truss, which is composed by 3 elements and is a unity. It's maybe a way to say that in the tripod there is a structure where unity is not 3, it's not 1, it's not 2, but 3. And this makes me think about what it is Eros. Eros is a Greek god that is like the instrument of conjunction. It's the godness that puts together 2 glances to transform 2 glances, which are human glances, into God's glances, into gods looking one to the other, which make love possible and make that 2 become 3. So the tripod is a kind of representation of this idea that 1 is 3 if love is present, if Eros is present.
But there's also a kind of connection. It's a vertical connection, and almost is also like anthropomorphic in that sense. I mean, there is a reference or an allusion, to the body in terms of the verticality of the tripod.
Well, in those sculptures, the tripod works like a skeleton, like well.
Here, there are many tripods. Yes, we're going back.
Well,
Okay.
Well, I think that the structures of this tripod was positive to support this verticality of mankind. There is a paradoxical situation. This tripod holding some of the sculptures which have no basis, which is the characteristic of the drawings and of the sculpture, which, like the green one there, which is composed by part of the body, is that there is no side. On the contrary of what I was referring to Brancusi, maybe the unique reference that I get is Hans Arp, some of Hans Arp's sculptures, and who is well known to build sculptures like some of the metaphor they use for Arp sculpture is saying that they grow like plants, so they are like a completude. So this tripod, this erectile posture is to hold this body that can be transformed into a unity.
But it's almost like it's holding the body parts, almost like marionettes, And I know that you have talked about that, that relationship between the body and the marionette, and someone that's manipulating the bodies. And these, they're also extremely anthropomorphic in the way in which all of these elements also, again, conjure up the body.
Yeah, there's
of line. Yeah.
Well, the elements, in a certain sense, the terracotta pieces, and there are kind of development on a vocabulary which what we can build one of those other pieces. The procedure on topology is cut and glue, cut and glue. So I just arrived to three different shapes that I knew that cutting and gluing, I could represent any body of these other quality of bodies. And so the tripod is the place where this operation can happen. And well, the marionettes were present in several other pieces, and I think that they opened the field for me to say that this hand, which is manipulating the marionette, that can be God's hand when you see the gigantic installation, now is the proper hand of the sculpture. It's a self-builded body because there are two or many bodies implied that are building themselves continuously.
Now you have talked, and I know we're running short of time, so I want to just try to bring this to a close. You have written and spoken about the fact that the exhibition is not an installation, but it's rather an instauration. Instauration. I don't know if that word even exists in English. So what do you mean by that? What do you mean by the word instauration?
Yeah, because, well, this is in French or in Portuguese makes more sense. It's a jeu de mots between install and instaur. Instaurate, I don't know. No. It's instaurer or instaurar in Portuguese. It's make things appear. It's giving light to a phenomena. Installation is some physical thing. I'm going to install the light. I'm going to install the system. I'm going to install the exhibition. But if it's proper poetry, it is about to make a new light over things that are or not already there. And this is the job of a poet. And what I pretend to be is a poet, so that's my job.
Yeah, that was my last question. Do you consider yourself a poet or a visual artist?
Yes, I think that, well, visual art or poetry or music or theater, we're dealing with the same thing. This is not a specialty. I think that the artist in general is like a general medical generalista.
Yes.
Medico generalista.
Oh, like an internist.
An internist. So he might know about language, and language is everything that crosses to our minds and everything we can do. So I remember early works, I was with kids trying to explain the work, and I say, look, do you wash your hands? And the kids say, yeah, so you're doing a sculpture. Because every day you're taking off from the soap a part of it, and you're making a different shape. So this is a sculpture. Obviously, we need the consciousness and the intentionality. That's make the poet. That's make the difference between just washing the hands and make soup sculptures.
That's great. Yeah. I think that with that, if anyone has any questions or comments that you want to make or ask any question to Tunga, yes?
Good evening, Tunga. I love you and I love your work. I just want to ask you, in sculptures with the materials that you have, I'm sorry, I don't really understand.
Can you speak louder?
Oh, can you explain the material in your sculptures? Because I don't understand it. I love it, but I don't get it.
Yeah, in this particular series,
Yeah.
well, I try to identify the from minerals to resins. I try to, after my trip to Asia, where we met, I start to be curious about the way the animist relationship with what objects were. And I understood that a crystal is something that comes from the interior of the world from highly pressure. I understood that a pearl is a successive layers of something that the oyster produce. I understood that the sponges come from the deep of the sea. I understood, well, that the meteorite is something that comes like stardust. And putting together those really, really high distance it's a kind of magic way to connect different places and different spaces. For instance, I have one piece which is not here, which is a meteorite, a crystal, comment est-ce qu'on dit? Eso que crece en el agua.
Alga.
No.
Okay. Reef, coral reef.
Coral.
Coral.
A coral, a meteorite, a crystal, and an amber, and sacred amber. So I just look at those pieces together, and I felt that what a strange moment to join something that comes from deep to the sea and is crystallized, something that encounters distinct from the deep of the sea, encounters a crystal that comes from the earth, that goes together with something that came from the space. And then I just remembered reading Luhring or Baudelaire saying that the question was to put the heterogeneity together to create strangity. So I tried to put the most distant and remote things together to create a new effect. And this new effect being a new feeling for the body and for the consciousness.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Wow.
Yes?
Hi, this has been a fascinating discussion. Thank you very much. So, sort of building on what you were just saying, I mean, the show's called Avoir Humide, which I think is like an alchemy term.
Yep.
Yes.
And then, you know, a lot of the work that you've been showing, the discussion you've been having, has been in a very sort of pre-modern or sort of in terms of the materials, in terms of some of the psychological questions. But then there seems to be a lot about modernity, and I'm talking about Baudelaire, I'm talking about Baudelaire and the surrealists that you've been talking about. And I mean, certainly what I know about Brazilian art is quite a bit of concern about what it means to be modern. And so could you maybe talk a little bit about sort of what is timeless in the work versus what is contemporary in the work? Sort of how those come into conflict?
Well, I try to understand that modernity is, it's still there. And there's still a way to understand contemporary or modern organization of the states of mind. And I think that the strategy that, let's say, on till the moment of modernity starts to be in crisis and post-modernity was tried to be established, is that this strategy of modernity was failed or were transformed into another thing. Modernity does not appear like a spontaneous thing. It appears from a research for the avantage, the wish, the will of a different vision of the world, how it was organized. This different vision modernity came from French Revolution, from
Enlightenment.
From the Enlightenment, from lots of different things. But in terms of visual art, it was established to create a pattern for new subjectivity, for the new self. And I think that this gets to a moment that it's failed. It's transformed into another things. But we still have the references from where modernity has been drinking, the fountains that modernity drink. When you say that Picasso was looking for primitive art, or what they call primitive art or African art, it's because he was in straight contact with archaic energy, and he was able to combine the archaic with what was happening to create this new thing. One artist which concerns me very, very much is Pasolini, that I think that has been crossing the same direction in a certain way, even thinking about sexuality. So I think that there are inside what we call modernity an enormous amount of potency, of different interpretation of what modernity had been established as. So curiously, recently people discovered the works by Ilma auf Klimt, for instance, which is an abstract painter that was doing in 95 abstraction through another sources, not through the same sources that made Malevich done this so wonderful construction on white and over white. So there are different ways, different roads to try to understand modernity, the failure of modernity, and the potentialization of the bases that concern us, still concern us in modernity.
Do you feel that this presentation of yours, in a sense, is
You're talking about this
as
discussion?
distinct from what you have shown us? What you're telling us here is like a distinct thing from what we're seeing on the street, the screen.
You
are presenting us a new version of what is on the screen.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that one of the ways for me to talk about art is fiction. Thank you. He's a fictionist. Thank you.
Does that answer your question? I hope
It's all
so.
fiction. Okay. Okay.
Mari
Okay,
Carmen,
thank you.
So, thank you. Thank you, Mari Carmen. Gracias.
Super.
Okay.